Okay, yeah, let's do it. This is what, episode 80? This is 90,
No,
isn't it?
90.
Wow, it's wild, man. 90. Okay.
Sorry, just AirPods desperate to connect. Okay, welcome everyone to the Tokyo Jazz Joints podcast. It's episode 90. That's 90 if you just started listening. No, that wouldn't make sense. But anyway, it's not 19, it's 90. We're edging slowly towards 100, and it's only the 5th day of this trip in May, James. Only the 5th day. So still a fair few stories to tell. How are you this week?
Doing really, really well. Yeah. Just got out of the kitchen, doing a little OK Jazz chef work. Made up a fresh batch of Greek tzatziki, and gonna go full Mediterranean tonight for dinner. So it's been a good Sunday, a very productive Sunday, and it's not even including the great podcast recording. So yeah, I'm feeling peachy keen, man. How are things in Belfast?
Good, very hot. So apologies to listeners for this image, but it's the
18 and partly cloudy only. Huh?
It's the first ever episode that I've been forced to do by circumstances. I've been forced to do topless. Oh, God. It's 25 degrees here. 25 degrees.
Ruined my great Sunday vibes now.
There's not a cloud. There's not a cloud in the sky. Don't pretend you haven't seen me topless. Don't pretend you haven't seen me topless. Yeah, a boiled egg, just the yolk dripping down my arm. Anyway, it's very hot. I mean, there's not a cloud in the sky for the third day running.
Wacky summer nights in Belfast.
It's absolutely wild. It's insane. Anyway, 85% chance of rain tomorrow. So back to porridge.
There you go.
Anyway, so as I said, it's day 5 of this May trip. Well, because we don't record in a block of 3 days, it's sort of hard to believe because you feel like you've already talked about so many places, and yet we're only on the 5th day. So just to catch up of where we left off, I'd finished off that long day in Doug. I got back to the hotel and spent a fairly long time trying to get the smell of smoke off my clothes, which I feel like I never quite did, especially off the Hebtroco jacket that I was very kindly gifted by the lovely Ed Oxley of Hebtroco when I went over to visit them in Hebden Bridge. But yeah, I mean, I set out on the Wednesday morning, and it was a big day actually, because I was heading up to Sapporo that evening. But before that, I also had a meeting with the Japanese publisher who are called Seigensha. They're actually based in Kyoto, and they have an office in Tokyo. But what was not revealed to me before I agreed to this meeting was that no one spoke any English in the Tokyo office. So when I turned up, still a little jet lagged, a little warm. I think I just dropped off. I dropped off some records to my friend Tom's house, and yeah, you know that sort of feeling where you're just about on time, but you can't walk any faster because you just don't want to sweat anymore, and you don't want to turn up at an office a bit kind of disheveled. So I got there anyway. I didn't need to worry because there was at least 15 minutes of exchanging meishi and bowing and sort of slightly awkward introductions. There was one young intern who was standing with a tray with tiny bottles of cold green tea on it. That was basically seemed to be what he was doing that morning. But very nice meeting. As I mentioned to you, and other people will know in time, is that Jazz Hihyo were also there. So they're going to do a really nice feature on the Japanese version of the Tokyo Jazz Joints photo book in September. Yeah, but I was totally and utterly exhausted when I left because I haven't spoken Japanese that long for a long time.
I remember you telling me that you kind of just assumed that maybe one of the handlers who was working with Kara on communication would have spoken, would have been there speaking English, and they were not. But on the flip side of it, like unlike Philip, you and I both been in a lot of Japanese meetings in our lives that drag on without any solid resolution. And that can be like, it's just mind-numbingly frustrating, especially for people like us who like to move a little bit quicker. But in this case, when you walked in, it was the opposite surprise, that things had moved along pretty quickly, more than we'd even expected. And so it was sort of like, that was like a sort of a happy surprise.
Yeah, I mean, they had printed out a Japanese version of the book, which I had not seen yet, and yeah, I mean, it was amazing, really. The editor was on the screen from Kyoto on Zoom. There was a few members of the Seigensha team. And but just really exhausting. I mean, I hadn't spoken Japanese for long. I was struggling to get a few words to try and get some clarity, but overall it went really well. And I came out and I had a flight to Sapporo around 5:00. Slightly misjudged the timings, perhaps, but managed to get in a quick bowl of ramen. And I was just so emotional because, again, you just think, well, I came here at 22 and now like sitting here in this office at 50 and there's this book in front of you and it's going to end up back in a lot of the kisa. And it's just a very emotional kind of feeling. I may just have also been very, very tired, but I spent, the entire time eating my ramen, trying not to sort of cry into my soup, and called Julie, and I was like, I just feel so emotional. I pulled myself together up by the bootstraps and got myself to Haneda on time for, once again, that one of just, the wonder that is flying domestically in Japan. I mean, it's almost easier than taking a train. I mean, there's no people in the airport.
Yeah, easily accessible, beautiful airport, great food, like domestic as well. You just zoom through. And then it's a pretty short flight. I don't even remember. Is it 2 hours to
I think it's a couple of hours. But I mean, if you've ever traveled in Europe, anyone listening, if you traveled domestically in Europe or within Europe on sort of low-cost airlines, or naming no names, EasyJet, Ryanair, or you've traveled in America, which again famously domestically is like a real rat race.
Shocking.
I mean, it's unbelievable the difference. I mean, it's just in fact you get. I mean, just to demonstrate that, you get an email which says to you, be at the gate 10 minutes before departure. And if you've traveled in Britain or in Europe, you'll know that like there's a lot of protocols to go through before you get on the plane. Then they herd you into a stairwell usually and make you stand there for another 30 minutes. Often you have to walk across the runway to get to the airplane, and if it's raining, well, you just get wet and so on. And then you travel in Japan domestically and you just think, wow, like why is it so? And actually the plane to Sapporo was a proper like 9 seats across, like a proper long haul type Boeing or Airbus, so I had full in-flight entertainment. Watched films and all. It was fantastic. Yeah,
not even expensive. And then when you land, and in Sapporo is, well, for many people I think listening have been to Japan and maybe been up to Hokkaido. Hokkaido is as far north as it gets in Japan, and it's definitely. I remember the first time going there, Philip, and I think when we went together too, we even talked about it a little bit. Like when you live in Kanto, in the Tokyo metropolitan region, you're very used to a kind of Japan where everything is close together, narrow streets, narrow alleys, small buildings, small houses. Even the big vista landscapes, everything looks a little bit kind of cramped and close together. And then when you fly up to Hokkaido, and it totally made sense to me, because years ago a Japanese friend had said that, like, oh, James, you'll like Hokkaido because it looks like America. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And sure enough, as soon as you land there, you're like, oh yeah, it kind of does. Like the landscape just looks like wider, more spread out. You've got these giant, bigger houses, all with the double glazed windows because of the cold. And it just has a very different kind of feel right from as soon as you get on the airport train, looking out. It's because it's about 45-minute ride, I think, from Chitose Airport, right, to
Sapporo
I think
Station.
so. But I mean, it's a bit out there.
But also the cities are just planned, right? So I mean, Sapporo is a great city. It's it's kind of a grid. It's fairly intuitive. It's planned out. What you also kind of don't realize, I think, when you don't go in the snow, is that most of the city is also accessible underground. So you can walk for long distances in these underground passages because because of the temperature and the snow, right? So it's a great city. I love it.
That because it's planned because Hokkaido was only settled by the Japanese in the 19th century, really. Before that, there is an indigenous population, the Ainu people, who, sadly, like many indigenous peoples, have been very much oppressed,
largely wiped
colonized.
out, yeah.
But they do have some, thankfully, some resurgence of their culture recently, and some cultural centers and whatnot in Hokkaido. But yeah, it definitely has that feel of like it feels separate from the rest of the Japan, kind of the same way that Okinawa does. You know what I mean? And we'll get to that on a later episode again too. But
yeah,
but I think like
but then you have also, planned, I mean,
mm-hmm.
you kind of have all the things that I mean, there's things that are specifically Hokkaido. But then actually one thing I was noticed as walking around again is you also have these huge designer stores in Sapporo and things. So it's kind of like if someone said, well, see if we can reinvent Tokyo but make it slightly less hectic. It has that feel, it's not like this kind of regional city where you could live there very happily, I guess, and never go to Tokyo. And there's plenty of food, there's plenty of stuff to eat, there's plenty of shops, so you get all the brands, all the kind of things that you want. There's loads of music stuff, and then obviously the advantage of being there is that very quickly, unlike Tokyo, you can be out in the countryside, and of course then in the ski season you can be skiing and snowboarding to your heart's content, right? In a very short distance from from Sapporo. And also you have the coast, right? So you can get to the sea, you can get to beaches and things like that as well. So it's sort of a wonder that more people don't move there, to be perfectly honest,
Yeah, I think everybody that visits, and as we're going to get into, you're forgetting all the plentiful jazz, but yeah, I think it is that sense of like 5 to 6 months of winter is rough, man. It's rough. You got to be prepared for that. Like when I was up there, it was only it was November the last time that I'd been up there, and it was already very crispy outside. So I think everybody kind of falls in love with the town, especially that regional food, which is great up there, But then you've got to look at that of 4 months of like really punishing Arctic winds and darkness. And I don't know, for me, I can't do it. That's a deal breaker.
Wouldn't go with the batik.
yes, the batiks would be the batiks and the Jazz Cafe t-shirts would be piled away in the depths of the closet.
Just the wrong combination altogether.
But Philip, when I it's funny, we were talking offline because the last time I'd been there was November of 2022, and I mean it's coming up to close to 3 years already. I went there on my 25th Japan anniversary. And some of the places that we're going to talk about are ones that I had scouted out. And then when you came back, we were able to go and visit. A couple were revisits, But I don't think on our first trip way back in 2018, I don't think the project was still kind of young, and I don't think we really realized how many places were in Hokkaido. I think we thought there were just a few famous ones in Sapporo, and we only ended up remember we spent one night there,
Yeah, it was, from my point of view, some of my favorite photos, particularly the last photo in the book, which is the owner of Jericho asleep, and in the foreground is the magazine that says Jazz Life.
Classic.
And I think we just didn't realize. And also on that same trip, we managed somehow to get to Hakodate as well. I think we went to Hakodate in the day, flew there, went there in the day, and then we made our way up to Sapporo. So it was very quick, and probably now looking back, quite unrealistic in terms of.
Well, we were a lot younger and more energetic.
We were young, naive, 44-year-olds.
44-year-old jazz fans. I mean, come on now. That's energy.
Why would you expect them to know anything about the world? But anyway, so look, it was good for me to go back, and it was sort of within my sights. Actually, were a couple of other places that we're going to cover on the next episode that are not actually in Sapporo, but like anywhere, Sapporo is a great base to get around to other places in Hokkaido. So I took a flight at 5 and checked into my hotel and hit the trail almost immediately after I landed. And the first place was a place that I think you had mentioned called Jazz Bar Solitude. Now I'm going to start on a low note in Tokyo Jazz Joints tradition. I'm going to start on a low note and say the only note that I have for Jazz Bar Solitude is best part was the matchbook, which I'm holding in my hands right now, a beautiful gold matchbook. And I have to say, I was a little disappointed.
Yeah. It's funny. I can't say I disagree with you. I think I had a better visit because I got there and there was no one there, so I was able to talk to the master a bit. But the two things I remember, well, three things. I definitely remember the matchbook, which was nice. I remember the sign outside, which was gorgeous, because I love a good sign. But I've got it underlined in the notes. It was really dark. And I've got my diary from 2022 here, and my handwriting is absolutely illegible because it was so dark I couldn't see. I'm going to send you that right now, Philip, by chat. But it's one of those bars that I think is more probably like indicative of what a lot of non-serious jazz fans imagine a late night jazz bar to be. Like it's a long counter with cocktails and some whiskeys. The guy's like Natalie dressed and he's playing vocal jazz records, and it's kind of that place you would go late at night, maybe to bring a client or a date or whatever, but it's not a place for like hardcore. It's certainly not a place for violent jazz like we like it. And I also remember it being quite expensive. I think it was, I've got the notes here, 1,300 yen charge, which is pretty steep.
Yeah. I mean, weirdly, I can read all your notes, which is sort of a little unsettling, to be perfectly honest. But I can read the whole thing. It's like
it's great. I'm having
some sort of Rosetta Stone ability when it comes to your handwriting. I actually don't think I've ever seen your handwriting properly before, which is
shows
also
how much
unsettling considering
shows how much
often.
you pay attention to my note taking. Very serious note taking on our journey. Yes, I mean this is my diary from 2022. I've still got it on the shelf, but
well, at least I know that I'll be able to go back and read it once you're gone.
Yes.
Once I'm sending it to the Smithsonian, I'll be able to decode it for them. But yeah, it was expensive. I've got that too. And so, I mean, I went almost immediately after they opened, and there was already two very kind of like shoot show guys. They were obviously up there for a business trip. It felt like they were regulars. And I sat down at the bar, and it was very dark. I mean, photographically, it's kind of one or two shots really, because there's only about 10 to 12 seats. It's a really small little place. And the old guy, like you say, he was Natalie dressed. He was playing kind of, Sinatra and kind of vocal stuff, quite not particularly loud. And it made me think of, that kind of place where maybe at one time, like we mentioned it in the previous episode, but maybe at one time it was much more of a hardcore place, possibly, back in the days when the money was flowing. It was probably packed and might have had a very different feel, I guess, when the owner was younger, but it was definitely somewhere that was a bit more chilled, a bit more relaxed. I made a bit of a scene of kind of getting things out of my bag and, writing notes and blah, blah, blah. And I got the sense that the owner was, he kind of was just on the cusp of sort of saying, so what are you at? What's going on here? And I don't know what it was. Maybe I was just in a bad mood, or I was just tired or something. I just thought, I just can't even. I don't know. It just annoyed me, basically. So I mean, it was a nice place, but I just was like, no, I can't.
Very simply put, it's just not our type of place. You know what I mean? It's just, I thought from the sign, because again, I love that the sign is just like an arrow. A white arrow pointing downwards, down some like crudely drawn steps, and it just says Jazz Bar Solitude. So it's like, all right, that's a great sign, And I think I'm going to enjoy this place. But then when you get down, I mean, really for me, it's I can overlook almost anything if I'm digging the tunes. But I think all of our listeners by now know that I've got a ginormous blind spot when it comes to vocal jazz. And so if 3 records in a row are going to be vocals, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to finish my drink quickly and move on to the next place. There's more than enough places to explore. Very nice, atmospheric. I'm sure that, the whiskey would be good. And like you said, you've got some guys there on business trip, whatever, after work. It's very centrally located. So it's definitely, I mean, I've got it down here. It's been open since 1982. It's the same guy. So, 43 years, he's clearly got a clientele.
I toyed with going back the following evening, but to be honest, it was so damn expensive. I mean, I think also sign of the times, there is now a handwritten sign that's in the one of the little narrow windows, laminated, of course. It says no card, cash only, charge 1,300, drink 700, please speak low, which, again, is code for I'm getting a lot more foreign customers now and they're coming in here and being very loud. So I thought that was interesting, but,
Wait, he said, you had the sign that said cash only, because I'm literally looking at my photo right now and he's got the Visa and MasterCard signs on it.
Yeah, so it must be
that's odd.
Too many people using cards. So he's obviously changed it I guess it's a lot of foreigners.
It's usually the opposite,
maybe non-Japanese coming in on holiday.
For sure.
I mean, bear in mind as well that, to those who don't know, it's actually the same window. So he's got that one down below that speak low on your photograph as well. But up above, he's changed that sign to no card, cash only. But I mean, to those who don't know, Hokkaido, there are large swathes of Hokkaido that are almost entirely Australian during the snowboarding season. So Hokkaido is one of those places that gets tourism all year round, and particularly in the winter ski and snowboard season, you get this influx of non-Japanese. So it may be something to do with that. Maybe people are coming in and just being louder than he likes, and I can understand that as well, because it is a place where the music is, it's sort of like it's a bit like your jazz bar of the imagination. There's some quite nice music on in the background. It's a quiet, dark place, but yes, as you say, not necessarily from our point of view somewhere that really lights your fire, I don't think. Unlike, of course, the next place that I headed off to, and I wasn't sure what to do about the order. There's 2 or 3 names that we had, and I was like, should I go here? Should I go there? But I'm very, very glad that I went to the next place, which I think you've also been to on your Japaniversary trip, which was Bar 81. And I've just got, in contrast to Solitude, the first line just says epic spot with a couple of exclamation marks. Well, I had a blast.
Epic for a bunch of reasons. And before we get into the bar, we have to, because you and I exchanged a bunch of messages. And then I remembered actually going back to my trip in 2022, calling you about it, because, so you mentioned how a lot of Sapporo is connected by these underground passageways where you can walk really far to like the central station. You can walk a couple kilometers, to avoid that heavy winter. So related to that, a lot of the buildings are sort of connected either through these kind of like passageway bridges, like the kind that you might see in a place like Minneapolis in the States, right? Or just through like an underground basement. So I remember looking for Bar 81 and completely getting consumed within this gigantic building called the Daini. I think it's the Daini Seiwa building. So it was like, all right, Daini already means number 2. So it means that's the second building. So there's 2 of these buildings that are 6 stories plus basement bars. And I've got a picture of the Daini sort of like directory. It's 57 different bars in this building.
Yeah,
and
it's insane.
I just couldn't find Bar 81. I kept getting lost. And I asked someone and they were just like, I don't know, And so I went down, I finally found this directory, I looked through every single floor, and then it finally found Bar 81, was able to get to there. But that took me, I think it took me half an hour to find it.
Yeah, I've just got here. How mad are those buildings with hundreds of bars? I mean, that's what I got. I remember the Daini. You sort of go in off the street, and then you go in round to the back, and I walked through. There's like a few eateries, and I mean, again, I photographed a few of those directories too. Yeah, it's just wild, right? How many places there are. I mean, this is why I think. Members Bar Casbah.
And there's one, this is what I was saying. There's ones that it pretty much cater, even if you can't find the one you're looking for. Okay. They've got so many different kinds of bars that look pretty cool. Like there's the H's Attic. I don't know. That just sounds kind of intriguing. Bar Applause. MCR, My Collection Returns. Again, mysterious. What's the type of collection?
You're forgetting about Bar OMG.
Bar OMG, Bar Atomic Age. I mean, these are some amazingly cool names, right?
I think my favorite's got to be, Terrier Pub Snack, and also Takoyaki and Shisha Triple. I mean, what's the third thing?
That's a rather revolting.
Just wild, the names.
Let's just eat some takoyaki and smoke some shisha. Like, what the fuck? Jesus.
But I'd say the bar that would least likely be be least likely to gravitate towards would be on the 4th floor, and it's simply known as the Friendly Bar. Not for me, thanks. Not for me. Amazing. It's just wild.
Yeah,
Can't stop reading it.
I've got another joke that I think it's best to keep to myself here for some of these other bar names. So anyway, I think people get the idea though. Like and again, this is the number 2 building. So number 1 again has got 50 plus. So you could just be lost in this building and just end up having like 4 or 5 drinks over the night and all these little small bars. And so they're basically all the same size. Like I've got in the notes for Bar 81. 8 seats, narrow, open since 1998, and then triple underlined, great sound. So he had some kick-ass speakers in there. I don't know if he was pumping the music when you went in.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of as an equivalent, I mean, if you've been to Japan, this will make perfect sense to you. But if you haven't, I mean, the only thing I can think of is wherever you're living, if there's any older buildings that like used to be residences or quite grand houses, and now they've been divided into like an absurd number of apartments that they were never intended to be. So you kind of get these long, narrow spaces. That's what it's like, right? It's like if you took a kind of a standard size, like American living room, and you divide it into like 4 or 6, vertical spaces with walls in between. That's the kind of bar that you get. I mean, you literally have the bar. There's enough space to walk behind the stools and the counter, and then there's usually a toilet at the end. And in many of these places, actually, there's not even a toilet, right? It's a kind of a communal toilet somewhere in the corridor, right?
Again, regular listeners, well aware. Before I went to Bar 81, so it's funny because this was your first night there. Like Bar 81 was the last bar I visited, and on my like 3 or 4 day trip, but before going there, I had been at the Sapporo Brewery. I went on the Sapporo Brewery tour, and then of course hit the tavern there for some very fresh Sapporo Classic and Genghis Khan fry-up, So I was already about 4 beers in by the time I got to 81. So
basically comatose.
So by the time I'll ignore that. By the time I was walking around the dining building getting lost, I'd already found a couple different bathrooms. And then, they're always down the hall by the elevator because there's no way they could be inside of the joints. But I remember having a really fun chat with the guy because once I spoke Japanese to him, we had a long conversation. It was a Monday night, so nobody was there, but me. And as soon as I told him I came from the brewery, we just got off onto like a really long discussion about Sapporo TV ads because he had like I was telling him how in the brewery they've got this whole like section of the marketing through the years with all the different like actors and celebrities who had been spokespeople for it, and he was like, oh yeah, like actually like I used to work at another place and we collected those and these kind of vintage 60s and 70s movie posters. So we didn't actually talk so much about jazz. We only talked about Sapporo Brewery and then a little bit about his speakers. Which he was telling me that, he put together himself, but it was a little bit difficult because that shape of the bar, I mean, it is a tiny little rectangle. It's one of the smaller bars I think we've been to for sure. It was a little bit tricky for him to get it right where the sound wouldn't be bouncing off. But when I was sitting there, I said, well, whatever you did to like put it together, it worked because it sounds clean. I'm not hearing any echo at all. And again, this was the kind of place, especially if you were there in one of those heavy Sapporo winters, you could just sit there for hours and hours having some whiskeys and listening to great tunes.
Yeah, which is exactly what I did with him actually after the initial sort of slightly awkward interaction because I've just sent you a picture of your favorite whiskey there. I might have sent it to you when I was there, but he said, what do you want to drink? And I'd spotted a bottle of Ryder's Tears.
Oh, you kidding? You had that there? Jesus.
But he wouldn't give me it because it belonged to someone. He was like, no, that's... a bottle keep? Oh, no. Yeah, it was a bottle keep. I was like, okay, I'll just have a beer then, please. But Hirai-san, I think, is his name. And he's been doing it for 27 years. And he's another example, like our beloved Pithecanthropus and a couple of other places that took it over from the original owner. I think the owner was planning to close it. And he basically said, look, can I take it over? And the owner said yes. And so that's how it's managed to survive. He said that the old owner, I got slightly lost at this point, but I think he said the old owner had opened a place called Adverse in Sendai. There was some connection with Sendai. yeah, we just sat there and listened, and he just put on record after record, always like a real mix of stuff, pretty loud, and it was just really nice. It was just one of those kind of, it's not like a mind-blowing place, but also it's just so lovely to have it to yourself and sit and listen with him,
I think also because we're spoiled in Japan. I mean, any other city in the world, you would be like, this is one of the best bars in the whole freaking country. You know what I mean? Like, you'd just be like, I'm going to go here all the time because he's got great vinyl, great jazz vinyl.
Yeah, if you were living somewhere else, you mean, right?
Yeah. If you were any other country outside Japan, you'd be like, this is a must visit. But yeah, I mean, in Sapporo, I it's one of many great ones. But no, it's definitely a great one. What's really curious is that he has like a kind of a simple website. But the name Bar 81 is one of those like very non-jazzy type of names. You know what I mean? Because especially when you're looking at that ridiculous like building directory where you have no idea to find or what many of these bars are. Are they snack bars? Are they whiskey bars, et cetera, theme bars? Bar 81 is very vague. And you might be thinking like, okay, 81, is it 1981? Is it an 80s rock bar? Or like, did it just open that year? And it didn't. It opened in 1998. So I didn't get around to asking him what the name was. But Philip, I've got in the notes that that it opened in 1998, but that he was running it only for the last 10 years. So maybe
he told me he'd been doing it for 27 years. That's what he said.
Well, the place has been open for 27 years. No, okay, wait, hold on. My notes, my scribbling is so bad.
Do you want me to read them for you?
Yes. It says
if you send me a copy.
No. He's been running it for 18 years.
Well, we'll have to agree to disagree because he told me 27. Okay. You sure you haven't written down Bar 81 backwards because it was so dark?
No, I didn't.
And then you've got 18 and put it next to the word years?
No, it definitely says he's been 1998 Kara. 18 years running it.
Well, hang on. Would that? Yeah.
So that means the original owner. Yeah, that makes sense. So because you said the original owner was some guy that was from Sendai.
Well, yeah, but it didn't say anything about names. But it wasn't 9 years ago that you went there, right? Because that would make it 27 and 18. It
was 3 years ago.
Okay. Well, anyway, look, I'm sure it's not a hill to die on.
Either
way, you took it over from the old
podcasting going on here.
Wow.
Yeah. Where's that Potty Awards that somebody's nominating us for?
Stand by to submit this episode to the World Podcast Awards. He made a kind of a snidey comment actually about Three Blind Mice. I thought it was interesting. We were chatting about the popularity of jazz kissa and the interest in jazz kissa and jazz bars and J-jazz, and he sort of rolled his eyes and he was like, oh yeah, blame TBM for that, I think he'd put on a Japanese jazz album and I said, oh wow, was it Joe Henderson and Teramasa Hino? I think that was possibly it, or Hino is it? Oh no, hang on. Did I write it down? No. Oh, more thrilling content. Hino and Kikuchi, was that it? Anyway, there was a live album he put on. I was like, wow, I've never seen this album. And he said, oh yeah, I said, it's so hard to, he said, blame Three Blind Mice for that. So that's interesting that there's that kind of awareness that, this Japanese jazz now is suddenly this like very desirable, very expensive thing to buy. But yeah, I don't know if you remember, and it's only just twigged with me actually now looking at the photograph in more detail. He had this collection of matchbooks on the wall in a frame, and actually it's one of the smaller collections I've seen. But now looking at it in more detail, I realize that actually it's because they're only Hokkaido joints, which just from a historical point of view is really interesting. Because he has, now there's a couple there potentially that are.
Gosh, I don't remember that. I'm looking at my photos now, and I don't think I got one of that. No.
Well, there's some. I'll send you the photo now. But there's some unbelievable places. There's like a Balado. There's a place called Blue Train. Quite a few in Kitami City seems to be. And then he has Aberu, but he also has this beautiful jazz Ron that is no longer there in Asahikawa. A place called Como using Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse. Famous jazz fans.
Surely cleared by copyright, of course.
Yeah, Modern Jazz Mexico. I mean, wow. It's just wild.
These are names.
Actually, most of them I don't know. I mean, a couple of them incredibly are still going. But
I wonder if our man at Groovy would have had this in his huge collection. Because he's a Hokkaido guy, and I just because remember he had like hundreds of pages of these, but wow. Oh gosh, yeah, this is great. Look at that. Como, Jazz Ron. Yeah, these are all new names to me. Yeah, this is
right.
amazing.
A lot of them I've never heard of. I mean, that Blue Train one is a triple album matchbook, which I never seen before. But anyway, it'll make more sense, obviously, as you're listening to look on Instagram at Tokyo Jazz Joints. You can see the photographs of some of the stuff that we're talking about as well. But yeah, it was just a really nice experience and kind of two sides of the same coin, because, you know, albeit some of it was probably my bad attitude in solitude, to go from there to Bar 81 and just to be able to have this chat with him and spend like a good length of time just sitting listening to records was a dream. It was really beautiful. I had such a lovely time. And the pressure was off me slightly, because actually the last two places, which we're going to chat about briefly perhaps, are two places that we've talked about at length on previous episodes in the podcast series. One is Jamaica and the final one is Jericho. And I just thought, you know, again, it's one of those places that we went to together in 2018. As you said, it was only that one night. You know, it was kind of hectic. There have been a few drinks, and sort of memories were, I think places get fixed in your memory as a certain way, because, you know, and then you tend to associate them with certain photographs as well. And then, you know, you wonder, will they be the same when you go back, or is it completely different to you, how you actually imagine them or how you're remembering them? So the first place I went to was Jamaica, and I have to say it was exactly as I remembered. It was absolutely brilliant. I mean, I had such a nice time in Jamaica. And Jamaica is distinctive, perhaps, in that, along with somewhere like Hayashi and Masako in particular, it's run by a fairly relatively young female owner who took it over from her father. And funnily enough, when I went in, she's one of those very cool Japanese women. There was not a lot of crack, not a lot of recognition when you came in terms of, like, it was just like, oh, hello, sit down, you know. And she was all business. It was all business, you know. Just she was getting stuff done, tidying up.
You need to play it really, really cool. Yeah, she's once you start talking, and because Philip had the exact same experience, because when I went back in 2022 and I remember thinking, like, okay, I want to get there early, and because I kind of wanted to, like, you know, to talk to her and also just enjoy the vibe before it got too busy. Because Jamaica is, I think a lot of our listeners are aware of, and many of them have been there, it's probably one of the 10 most famous jazz spots in Japan, especially because of the absolutely mind-numbing collection of records that are inside the bar. You know, it's funny, you see different counts on different blogs or here and there. Some people say that inside the actual bar there are 20,000 records. That seems a little high to me, but maybe there's more behind the counter, or one of those sliding, you know, those sort of like shelves that you can slide, you know, they're like double layered. So maybe there's more, but in any case, there's probably somewhere between 15 and 20,000 records in there. And it's just she awesome said, sight when you walk in.
Yeah, I mean, I've got here, I mean, for me, when I think of all the places that we've been, for me, visually, it's the biggest collection. I mean, you're slightly discombobulated because there's a mirror on the back wall. So you get this reflection. So if you stand on a certain point, it looks like the wall just goes on forever. And at the bottom of the wall is that huge Paragon speaker. But she said to me about 12,000. And then she made this joke about Basie, who apparently, when he's asked, he says, oh, I have 2 tons of records. So he gives it, of course, he gives it in weight rather than in the number of records. So, yeah, when I was chatting with the now owner, who is obviously the daughter of the original owners, the Higuchi family, and we know for sure her father passed away. I think actually possibly he had passed away when we were there. I think it might have been 2018 possibly, or 2017 that he passed away.
It was very recent. No, he died in 2016. And he was already
not long before.
He was already,
not long before we went,
in his early 80s. Yeah, and I mean, Jamaica is an old one. I mean, it was open since 1961. So it's a classic. It's a landmark. It's a kisa / bar that pretty much anyone who's interested in Japanese jazz kisa has heard of and or been to, because of the as we were talking about, just the monstrous collection. When you walk in, anywhere between 15 to 20,000 records, depending on what sources you look at. Plus, interestingly, 6,000.
Well, no, but
CDs
we've just covered that. I told you she said 12,000.
No. But that's maybe just in the shop, but their collection extends to way more at home. So
right, okay.
Sometimes the articles are talking about like just the complete collection. But I was also just surprised too, because I did notice the big rack of CDs, and I was like, I mean, Philip, I collect a lot of CDs over the years, right? And I've looking at my music wall, I've got about 2,000, which looks like a lot. So 6,000 is a lot, man. So, and it also tells you that means that she's playing, her dad, the original master, and she's continuing that tradition of playing a lot of contemporary jazz too, which is really cool, because we do know a lot of kisas sort of cut it off. Like, you won't hear stuff past 1978, 1980 when the CD era came in, Yeah,
so it's funny because, like, when I sat down at one end of the counter, there's a counter, and then along to the left, if you're sitting at the counter, there's the whole wall of records, and behind the bar, and as you say, there's all these cases with CDs, and then just behind you, there's a kind of like a sofa with a table and a few chairs in there that you can sit just where the mirror is, and in that section there was a group of they've given me the kind of international student vibe that they were maybe living there and studying. So there was about 4 or 5 of them, I think, and then on the counter, a few seats down from me, was an older woman with an even older father. She was bringing him out, and they had a bottle keep, and they're obviously regulars, and the owner was chatting a little bit with them, but. Yeah, I mean, it was eclectic, to say the least. So Kinda Blue was on at one point. And then this really odd Al Jarreau album came on, where he was singing Elton John covers. And these students behind me, someone was kind of singing along. And I couldn't work out if they were like singing along or sort of making fun, because, there was a couple of slightly odd like tracks where it was like, oh, look, what is this? But I mean, they then left.
Respect to Al Jarreau, because he was great. But that is
not. But we've all made bad choices.
Either of us would have enjoyed at all.
Yeah,
so
we've all made bad choices in our time. So anyway, this album came on, but then actually they left. Then the older couple left, and as if just to kind of realign the universe, she put on this Mingus at Carnegie Hall album.
Yeah, there we go.
Which I think George Adams was on.
Oh, and
it
he definitely was.
Just insane. Again, you just sat there, and this sort of sax is screaming out of the speakers, and she was just, she was cleaning up and like doing her thing. And I just was like, oh, this, and then it finished, and I said, okay, look, I'm going to head on here. And
Jamaica isn't Jamaica one of the one of our Paragon locations?
Well, it's funny that because
for the speakers, there was Paragon speakers.
So there's a Paragon earlier, which brackets I mentioned earlier, but close brackets. But anyway, there's a Paragon there, and funny enough, that was kind of one of the things. So she came along, and I said to her, "Oh, I don't know if I'm sure you don't remember, but I was actually here with my friend a few years ago. We photographed it, the place. I really wanted to come back. I had a copy of the book, so I showed her that. She was really interested, but and so I showed her the pictures of Jamaica." I got up the website, showed her the picture, because there's a picture of her kind of off in the distance behind the counter that's also on the website. But then she really we got very chatty, and immediately it was all very relaxed. And she was really interested in Paragon. So she said, oh, have you heard of a place called Paragon? And I was like, oh, yes, we've been there as well. And so I found the picture of Paragon in the book, and then I found the website link for her, and I showed her the photos. She was like, oh, that's one place I would really want to go. And the reason obviously for that was because, they both have Paragon. So for some reason, that one of all the places in Japan, that was the one place that she had a real interest in going to kind of see, which I thought was really nice, right?
Yeah, no, totally. And it's kind of cool as well, because it's like, even within this sort of, I wouldn't say exclusive, but like, this sort of niche underground culture in Japan of like the jazz kisa world, then you're gonna sort of like limit it even more and be like, yeah, but we're one of the only like 10 places that has like a Paragon speaker system. You know what I mean? So you're getting more and more exclusive as you limit your audio system. So that is very, very cool.
It's like a jazz keys of top trumps. It's like, what's your speaker system? And the Paragon's like the strongest card, right? It's the one that beats everything else, right?
You're like, well, I've got a regular JBL, and they're just like, yeah, okay. Wow, yeah, who doesn't?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was a really nice, and they closed I think at 11. So I got in about 10:15 because she said, oh, we're actually closed. I said, oh yes, no, I know, I just want to have a drink, and blah blah blah. And so this Mingus album finished, and we had a bit more of a chat. But what was one thing that she left me with, which really made me laugh, was, we were kind of chatting about, I said, oh, I've been to, this many places, and this is what I'm doing. And, I was here with my friend. Da, da, da. And she said, yeah, it's really funny that what people will ask you. And I said, oh, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, this customer was in one night, and she said to her, oh, jazz ga skina in the ska, which means, oh, do you like jazz? And she just rolled her eyes and kind of spat. She was like, well, yeah. I mean, like, would I be doing this? Would I be doing this if I didn't like jazz? I think what had prompted was I'd said, oh, like, obviously we're both really, we're both jazz fans. So it's actually, it's not hard work to go to these places and photograph. She was like, well, of course, you must like jazz if you're doing this kind of project. And I said, yeah. And she said, yeah, people say to me, like, literally, like, totally deadpan, so do you like jazz? And she's like, if I didn't like jazz, would I be spending 6 days a week in here?
It's just so insulting. And it's like, it's obviously a case of where, and I can totally imagine like the old Oji-san that probably asked her that, who was thinking that she was.
It was actually a woman. It was a woman.
A woman? Oh gosh, that's even worse. But I mean, obviously it's like kind of like, well, you must be just here as like a part timer, because as a youngish woman, you're clearly not a jazz fan. And it's kind of like, no, actually, I grew up in this bar. And no, Philip, but this reminds me, because when I did go in 2022, and I was asking her some questions about the scene and about sort of running the bar, her and her mom, like running it as women, and that there's, sometimes there's challenges as that. And she was like, well, because Jamaica is I forget, it's like the 5th floor maybe of the building. So you don't get like walk-ins the way you would for a bar that's on street level, where people, you know what I mean? Where you get like guys up there, not even know about the jazz. You got to know where it is, and you want to go there. So most of the customers, she's like, obviously over the years, occasionally there's been an incident or two, somebody drank a little too much or got a little aggressive or whatever, but the regular customers sort of like would take care of it. And then she told me, she was like, but who you really need to speak to is the woman downstairs in the basement of the same building. Okay. It's a place called a Half Note. And she was like, that woman's been running, it's called Jazz and Booze Half Note, which is a great name. It's a club, though. It's more of a club than a bar. It's why it wasn't on our list, But I was like, well, look, I've got time. I want to go. I'll go down and like, I'll try and just, check it out, see if I can have a drink. But unfortunately, like that was, again, one of those signs that you see on the door, a handwritten sign. It was like, Moshibake gozaimasen. I'm so sorry. Tonight, I'm only showing up at 10:30. And I was like, I already had like 3 other bars on the list that night, so I didn't get a chance to go talk to her. But yeah, Jamaica, Misaguchi had said, like, you need to talk to her because she's been running her place alone for like 35 years as a club, and so she would be able to tell you a lot more what it's like. So next time I'm in Sapporo, I'll make it a night. Again, it's amazing. The same exact building, Philip. You start in Jamaica, you go back down to the Half Note for the live gig, and then you go right back upstairs for a nightcap at Jamaica, and you don't even have to leave the building.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I don't know. I just love Jamaica. I love the sign. I love the big black door. I just love everything about it. It's just
an all-time
an incredible
classic.
place. Even the old sort of slightly weird kind of like patterned furniture with kind of velour. The whole place is just, it's just wild. It's just a wild place. And it made me think, about how easily we skip between these places, and we have the privilege to be able to go and visit all these different places. But, thinking back to Paper Moon, to Yamamoto-san, and the way that she kind of said, and, your first thought is like, well, then, pop down. But then I suppose if you're tied to somewhere like Jamaica, I mean, there's worse places to be tied to, but if you're doing that day in, day out, 6 days a week and rarely taking a holiday, then it's not so easy just to nip down to Kyushu.
Yeah.
And go visit these places.
Think about it. Like, any business that you run, you got to be able to trust the people that you call in when you're not there. But like, you're not just running like a business or a regular cafe. You've got this massive record collection in there and this incredible audio system. It only takes one bad night for a lot of stuff to get messed up. You know what I mean? So you have to really be able to trust the people that you can bring in. And that's, I don't know, if for me, I would find that not very easy to do. So that's, I think a lot of the jazz kissa and bar owners, they have this kind of network, because when you talk about places, they always know what you're talking about. They're like, oh yeah, Nani Nani-san, tell him that I sent you. You know what I mean? Like, they all seem to like know each other, but they don't necessarily get together. I think we mentioned a few episodes ago, Philip, I don't know if this was online or not, but when before Eiga-kan closed, Hayashi-san from Candy in Chiba, one of our favorite joints, remember? She went to visit Yoshida-san before he retired at Eiga-kan. And I remember seeing, I wasn't there, but I saw the Twitter post, and it was like they hadn't seen each other in 25 years. And so there was this beautiful picture of them just having a big hug, you know what I mean? With like smiles and stuff. And it was kind of like, it was so cool, because you kind of just feel like, yeah, all these people, like, okay, maybe they don't get to meet much or visit each other's shops that often because they're working in their own places, but they know each other, they support each other, they love each other. And you do feel like, yeah, you're kind of a part of this world, And I mean, we feel like that too, thankfully.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's just a privilege to be able to go to these places and to be part of that, in whatever small way. And yeah, fantastic evening in Jamaica. So I kind of said my goodbyes and left, and just to finish off the evening, because I knew it would be open, because it incredibly opens from like 9 p.m. to like 5 a.m. or something. I don't think mad.
Actually, I don't think he ever leaves. I think he just lives there. Yeah.
I guess not, right?
Yeah.
He's just always there, right? But yeah, I mean, he was there, of course. And if you don't know Jericho, as I said earlier, it's in the book, the photo book, as the last photograph. And we went there. And it was one of those places, I think, when we went there in 2018, we were like, wow, like this place is, I mean, you go into a building, it's got a little sign down one of these kind of old, dilapidated, building staircase. It goes down into the basement. And it's quite a big place once you get inside, quite wooden, very cluttered. The speakers are down the end. There's a piano. And the owner, Shibuya-san, is just doing his thing. And what was amazing, James, was like, again, this is one of these ones, right, where I have this image of what he looks like in my head. And actually, apart from some grey hair, he looks exactly the same. Amazing. And not only that, I sat down, had a drink. I was trying to pluck up the courage to actually give him a copy of the book, but I was also slightly nervous, because I was like, there's a photograph of him in here asleep. Like, how will he react, right? So yes. I was kind of sitting there, and then the maddest thing was he just sat down in the exact same seat again with his eyes closed. So I was like transported back to 7 years ago. Now I was sitting in a different position, but it was the exact same image of him just sat under the kind of archway of the door, just with his eyes closed, just looking kind of slightly up to the ceiling, and just loving the music. It was incredible.
I mean, this guy has probably seen how many cigarettes and bottles of whiskey over his years, man. Like, just like sleeping in that joint. You know what I mean? He is just on his vibe. I mean, that is so cool. I was really kicking myself after you went back and told me about it, because the night that I was there, the whole weekend I was there, I didn't make it back to Jericho. I meant to, but I did. For some reason, I was thinking that, like, we went we had to go late because there was a live gig on and we didn't want to have to go sit through it, you know? So I was kind of running around to other places. Like I went to Amefuri, which sadly you didn't get to on that trip. Maybe next time, you know, we can get there. But like a tiny little jazz bar not far from Jamaica. Everything's quite central in Sapporo, so it's easy to get to, you know? So I was kind of running around to different places. I didn't go to Jericho. I have a memory that Jericho, like you mentioned, it's in the basement, but it's like one of the most central like entertainment streets, right? Because there were tons of salarymen. I remember coming out of some whatever bar when we approached right after. Was it when we had the spicy pizza, right? Because we stopped for like a spicy pizza,
yes,
and then went to Jericho.
The one that just had like literally someone had just tipped a load of chilies out on.
I mean, that might explain why
never
I fell
seen so many
asleep.
chilies. Yeah.
Why I fell asleep in Jericho, because the master wasn't the only one sleeping in. The master wasn't the only one sleeping when we were in Jericho. I was definitely. I think I got a third of the way through the beer before my head was resting for a few minutes. But yeah, I definitely need to make it back because that was, you know, on our original trip, and we talked about it. I think it's some episode 34 or 35. We talked about it at length, but it is one of those places that's sort of like in between. I mean, you would never call it like a jazz listening bar, Kisa. It's weird. It's like in between. It's very cluttered. He has so many old magazines and books and random things all around, like really old bottle keeps that people have put for like 20 years. Then he's got a little corner where like the live music happens, but it's not exactly a jazz club. So it's definitely one of these like genreless sort of jazz joints.
Yeah, I mean, I was there completely on my own with him. He brought me one of the most terrifying snacks that you're likely to see, even if you've lived in Japan for a long time, which I sent you a picture of, which I may or may not post. But I mean, you know, I thought this is not a place, when you see it, you're like, this is not a place I'm going to be eating any food. But even for me,
I mean, for you to say that, that's pretty strong.
It's quite something, right? But anyway, like I sat for a while, and then I thought, like, so I plucked up the courage to go and chat to him. I said, look, you know, actually I was here a few years ago. I don't know, I'm sure you don't remember, but I photographed here, and this book came out in 2023, and I'd love to, you know, give you a copy. And he was just, I mean, underwhelmed is the word I've got in my nose. Just sort of went. Now, like if someone turned up, right, like 8 years down the line and said to me, look, I hope you don't mind, but, you know, I photographed you 8 years ago, and there's a really nice picture of you in this book, which has been published. And I would be like, wow. Like if the picture was good, I'd be like, wow. I mean, it was just very much like, all right. Now, whether he completely understood or whether he kind of, because then it was sort of, I said, well, you know, obviously I'd like you to have this. And so I kind of signed it and gave it to him. And he was actually he was very thankful. He wasn't like rude or anything, but it was just sort of like, there wasn't the kind of, you know, we've had it in a few places where it's like, there's none of that. It was just like, right. And then the weirdest thing was that what he wanted to know was, is this on Facebook? That was his first question. So again, more evidence that's where they're all sharing the information, right? And then he did the most.
I know it's. I feel bad that I quit Facebook because so many of these old jazz Kisa guys, that's the only sort of like social.
Well, that's
media
it,
use,
right?
But
yeah.
I'm just like I can't do it. Yeah.
Well, then he also then did the most sort of dad thing ever by photographing my screen. So I pulled up something on my screen, must be Tokyo Jazz Joints or something, and he sort of took a really bad picture of the thing on my screen, and then that was kind of it. That was sort of the interaction done. So I sat back down. I've just got written down, you know, is this the definition of contentment? Because he just went back to sitting under the doorway, leaning back, head same angle, eyes closed, listen to music. And the only thing that disturbed him was about 1 a.m. I think it was, these two lads came in who were obviously musicians, and I thought, I wonder if this is why he's open till 5 every day. So these two really young guys came in. They'd obviously been playing or practicing or rehearsing or doing something. They had instruments, and they came in, started smoking, had a couple of drinks, and ordered a full dinner. like full dinner. So he was away making food.
They would have had to been in their early 20s if they could stomach that.
They gotta be
Imagine
students,
what
right?
that guy was cooking up. Oh, Jesus! But
gotta be
listen,
students.
it makes sense because of that building. Look, like we said, like a lot of these buildings in that sort of central, I forget what it's called, the neighborhood there in Sapporo. But anyway, like that whole building is just bars, restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. So they could easily go in there and start practicing at like 2 a.m. and nobody's going to give a damn. So it's fine that he could open up until 5 a.m. there. Gosh, yeah, I definitely got to get back to Jericho. That was just,
but also
what a unique joint,
Yeah, I mean, you just get the sense that the man's just in his house, right? There's no sense of like, he brings snacks, of course, and drinks and everything else, but, and clearly food, but like, there's no sense of like, I'm running a business, I need to get home. It's like the two, in this case, it's like the two have just merged completely, right? Like he's sitting there rather than sitting at home listening to music. And then when people come in, like he serves them, and then he just almost instantly like just resets to like sitting under this door and listening to the music himself. And
he's
it's just beautiful. It's so
he is with up there with the master at Count in Sendai as one of our sort of Zen jazz all stars. Those guys would sit there with their eyes closed, looking serene. Occasionally light a cigarette, change the record, and just like they're just doing their thing, man.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, it's just, it's an incredible place. So that was a nice way to finish the evening. I think it must have been around, like I said, around 1 or so. So I was pretty tired by that point and headed back to the hotel because I had a big day coming up, which we're going to cover in the next episode, going to a couple of places that you have been to, and then one very holy grail type joint that even our good friend Mitch Buzz 1978 had not managed, I think, yet to get to. He'd been a couple of times and both times have been closed, so there's a lot of jeopardy, but we're going to cover those off in the second of the Hokkaido episode. So that was episode 90. James, as always, a pleasure talking to you. Longer than we thought again, so we hope that you appreciate that if you're listening. And,
hey, listen, like I said, I timed it well. I had a tall boy here of Sapporo Classic, which has just been drained, and so but nothing I enjoyed more than talking jazz joints with you, buddy. So
well, likewise, I'm going to pop my top back on and head downstairs, get a coffee.
Please do. You test Julie's patience more than enough with other things. I don't think she needs to see that on a Sunday morning. So.
Well, if she can't see it, she can't see it, I might need to rethink the plans in August. But anyway, take it easy. We'll see. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, you bet. Bye.
Bye.
Oh gosh. Okay.